Imagine this line appearing slowly on a dark screen, while somewhere in your life there is at least one person who has made you question your memory, your feelings, even your sanity. You walked into a conversation sure of what happened and walked out wondering if you overreacted, misremembered, or secretly wanted drama. You started as a witness and ended as the accused. That is not being sensitive. That is what it feels like when someone quietly starts editing your reality for you. In this video, we're going to walk through 7 deep gaslighting tactics, the shadow moves that slowly separate us from our own reality, and more importantly, how to resist each of them without losing ourselves. We will look at childhood, attachment, the shadow side of being reasonable, and then we will turn to the body, the jaw that hurts after every argument, the stomach that knots before every message, the nervous system that lives on permanent red alert. By the end, the goal is simple. Not to turn us into paranoid detectives who see gaslighting everywhere, but to give us a clear inner compass so that the next time someone tells us that what we feel never happened, a very calm part of us quietly replies inside, "I know exactly what is happening, and I know what to do next." It is a simple way to keep this kind of long-form depth in your world instead of losing it in the noise. To start, we need to clear one very important point. Most of us do not consciously choose gaslighters or narcissists. We do not wake up and decide, "Today I will pick someone who denies my reality and makes me feel insane." What actually happens is more subtle and far more frightening. The philosopher Viktor Frankl once wrote that when we can no longer change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. Gaslighters flip that script. They quietly change our perception of the situation until we start changing ourselves in exactly the ways that serve them. The reason these people keep showing up is not that there is something uniquely wrong with us. It is that certain parts of us were trained for them. Those parts feel like home when they meet someone who twists reality, even if that home was chaotic, shaming, and full of unspoken rules. So the work is not about blaming ourselves. It is about seeing which invisible reflexes gaslighters are sensing in us, like a wolf smelling old wounds. Before we go into the 7 moves, we need a one-sentence definition we can return to. Gaslighting is a repeated process of denying our reality and then pathologizing us for holding on to it until we start relying on their version instead of our own. One lie is not gaslighting. A different opinion is not gaslighting. Forgetting the milk once is not gaslighting. Gaslighting is when "I forgot the milk" becomes "You are impossible to please. You're always attacking me. There is something wrong with you." So often that we stop mentioning the milk at all and just doubt ourselves instead. With that in mind, let's walk into the labyrinth. Shadow move 1. Shift the lens. The simplest form of gaslighting sounds almost boring. Everything is somehow our fault. They cheat, and within 3 minutes the conversation is about how cold, distant, or busy we have been. They forget a promise, and suddenly we are discussing our tone, our expectations, our mental health. The original topic, their action, slides out of the spotlight. Many clinicians point out that blame shifting keeps us so busy defending ourselves that we forget what we actually brought up. We start arguing about our sensitivity instead of their behavior. The trick here is that our nervous system hates being seen as the bad one. If, as children, we were frequently blamed, shamed, or told we were too much, having the lens turned on us again hits an old wound. Maybe it really is me. So how do we resist this move? The first counter move is mental, not verbal. Silently move the lens back. When they say, "I only lied because you're so dramatic," we don't need a 20-minute defense of our personality. In our own mind, we can quietly name the reality. They lied. That is the only part we are responsible for responding to. Instead of entering the side quest of proving we are reasonable, we can ask one simple question. Are you willing to take responsibility for what you did? If the answer is another acrobatic explanation of how somehow it all comes back to us, we don't need a better argument. We need better boundaries. One practical tool here is what we might call one sentence and done. We state the reality once: you cheated, that is not acceptable for me, and then watch their response. If everything that follows is a monologue about our flaws, it is information. We are not crazy. We are being recruited into a familiar courtroom where we are always on trial and the original crime is never examined. If slow, dark psychology that doesn't forget the body is something you want more of in your life, you can subscribe to Labyrinth now so new episodes are easy to find when you are ready for them. Shadow Move 2. You're too. One of the most common gaslighting phrases begins with two words. You're too sensitive, too dramatic, too insecure, too emotional. On the surface, this sounds like feedback. In reality, it is often a strategy to make us drop the evidence we are holding. We bring up the fact that they insulted us in front of friends. Suddenly, the conversation is about how we can't take a joke. We say a boundary. Now we are talking about how selfish or cold we are. If we grew up in an environment where our emotions were mocked, minimized, or shamed, this hook goes deep. The child part of us would do anything not to be too much, because too much was often followed by withdrawal of love. So we start cutting off pieces of ourselves to fit. How do we resist this? First, by separating content from character. If someone says, "You're too sensitive," the question is not, "Am I?" but, "Did the thing that happened actually hurt me?" If it did, sensitivity is not the issue. Impact is. We can practice sentences that defend our reality without defending our worth. Maybe I am sensitive, but this still doesn't work for me. You might see it that way, but I felt hurt, and that matters. This sounds small, but psychologically it is huge. We refuse the hidden deal that we must first prove we are not 2x in order to be allowed to feel what we feel. Second, we can notice frequency. If almost every concern we raise gets turned into a diagnosis of our personality, we are not in a relationship. We are in an ongoing evaluation. Healthy people sometimes misunderstand us, but they do not systematically explain to us who we are every time we have a need. Gaslighters do, because if they can convince us we are fundamentally broken, we will hand them the tools to fix us, and ourselves along with it. Shadow Move 3. Flood and confuse. Have we ever tried to bring up one concrete issue and ended up drowning in an ocean of words? We say, "It hurt me when you joked about my job in front of your friends." And suddenly, we are in a 40-minute TED Talk about their childhood, their stress, our past mistakes, general philosophy, and 3 other unrelated conflicts. By the end, we feel disoriented and guilty, and somehow end up apologizing. This is not random. It is a deliberate or semi-deliberate flood meant to dissolve the sharp outline of the original problem. In dark psychology terms, they are scrambling the signal. Our brain does not like complexity under pressure, so it grabs the most familiar narrative, usually, "I'm overreacting," just to have something solid. How do we resist this? By holding the thread. Before the conversation, we write down in one sentence what we actually want to address. They yelled at me in front of the kids. They shared my secret. They called me names. During the flood, we mentally repeat that sentence like a mantra. Every time the topic drifts into a biography, a philosophy lecture, or our supposed flaws, we can gently but firmly return, "All of that may be true, but right now I'm talking about X." If they refuse to stay with X and get angry that we will not chase every rabbit hole, we can step out of the conversation. If we can't focus on this specific thing, we can talk later. We are not obligated to stay in dialogues that feel like spinning in a washing machine. Confusion is not a sign that we are dumb. It is often a sign that someone is dumping everything into the water so we can't see the bottom. Shadow Move 4. Attack the evidence. Gaslighters hate receipts. When we bring screenshots, messages, or specific quotes, they have two options: acknowledge or distort. Often they choose a third: destroy the messenger. Why were you even looking through my messages? That's insane. Only a paranoid person records conversations. You're obsessed. This isn't normal. Suddenly, the moral problem is not that they lied, but that we dared to verify reality. This is where many of us abandon ourselves, because we were raised to see conflict avoidance as maturity. We don't want to be petty or controlling, so we drop the evidence and return to self-doubt. How do we resist this move? First, by remembering a simple rule: their discomfort with evidence does not make the evidence less real. If we show a message where they clearly flirted and they reply, "You're crazy for interpreting it that way," we can again separate content from character. The content is, this message exists. The interpretation can be discussed, but its existence is not up for debate. Second, we can change what we are trying to achieve. The point of naming reality is not to make them confess. It is to be honest with ourselves. If someone consistently reacts to evidence with rage, mockery, or counter-accusations, that is not a mystery we need to solve. It is an ongoing answer about who they are willing to be. We can quietly note the pattern. When confronted with concrete facts, this person attacks me instead of engaging. That sentence is worth more to our future than any perfect screenshot ever will be. Shadow move 5. Recruit the tribe. Some of the most brutal gaslighting does not happen one-on-one. It happens through enablers, family members, friends, even therapists, who carry the gaslighter's narrative for them. We finally speak about the emotional abuse in our relationship, and hear, "Come on, he's not that bad, he just has a temper. She's under a lot of stress, you're being harsh," or the classic, "all couples fight, you're making a big deal out of nothing." In a narcissistic family, this can become an entire tribe chorus. "That never happened. You're remembering wrong. Why do you always attack your father, mother, sibling?" Experiments in social psychology have shown that people will doubt their own eyes when everyone else in the room insists on a different reality. Survival has taught us that being excluded from the group is dangerous, so when the group gaslights us, our body experiences real panic. How do we resist tribal gaslighting? First, by reducing the number of judges. Not everyone gets a vote on what is happening inside our home, our mind, or our body. We can practice choosing one or two grounded people, a friend, a mentor, a therapist, whose feedback we actually take seriously. Everyone else can have opinions. That does not mean we must inhale them. Second, we can watch behavior instead of words. If the person defending the abuser has never actually seen the worst of the behavior, their opinion is built on an edited version of reality. If someone tells us, "Your father never did that, but they weren't there at night in the kitchen," we can quietly file their statement under "not qualified to comment," even if they share our DNA. Gaslighters thrive in echo chambers. The moment we step out of the chamber, even internally, the spell weakens. Shadow move 6. Turn you against yourself. Over time, external gaslighting often becomes self-gaslighting. After enough, "You're crazy, you're too sensitive, you always remember wrong," we start saying, "Maybe I am crazy, maybe I am too sensitive, maybe my memory is broken." We preempt their attack by attacking ourselves first, hoping that if we agree with them, they won't have as much ammunition. It is a survival adaptation, and it works in the short term. They feel superior and strangely calmer when we agree that we are the broken one, but the cost is enormous. Self-gaslighting disconnects us from our inner compass. We begin to apologize in advance, to question every feeling, to laugh at our own pain before anyone else can. How do we break this loop? One powerful exercise is what we could call internal witness. Whenever we catch ourselves thinking, "I'm just being dramatic," we can pause and ask, "Who taught me that sentence? When did I first hear it?" Often an image appears. A parent rolling their eyes, a partner sighing, a teacher mocking. The moment we locate the origin, the thought becomes less like objective truth and more like an installed script. From there, we can experiment with new language. I'm feeling something and I want to understand it. I might be emotional, but that does not automatically make me wrong. Writing our experiences in a private journal without editing for someone else's reaction is another form of reality training. Over time, this creates a second voice inside, quieter, steadier, that says, I was there, I saw what happened. We are not insane. Shadow Move 7. Train your body to obey. Now we enter the body chapter, the place where gaslighting is written in jaw tension, breath, skin, and sleep. Even if we never use the word, our body knows when we are living in someone else's warped reality. The jaw tightens during yet another conversation where our feelings are explained away. The chest feels heavy after every discussion that ended with us apologizing. The stomach curls before we even open their message, as if it already knows there will be a trap inside. Sleep becomes shallow. We wake up at 3 a.m., replaying arguments, rewriting sentences in our head, trying to find a version of ourselves that will finally not be attacked. Somatic therapists describe a response called fawning, a survival strategy where we avoid danger by pleasing it. In a gaslighting environment, fawning becomes chronic. We smile when we want to cry. We agree when we want to protest. We say, it's fine, while our ribcage feels like a cage. In psychosomatic frameworks like German New Medicine, long-term experiences of not being believed, not being allowed to speak, feeling mentally attacked, are seen as conflicts that certain tissues adapt to, sometimes showing up later as chronic tension, inflammation, or strange symptoms that doctors can't quite explain. Whether or not we follow every detail of that model, one thing is hard to deny. Our tissues are listening. They feel when the story we are living and the story we are telling collide. So, how do we begin to resist gaslighting at the level of the body? First, by making space where our body is not under interrogation. That can be as simple as lying on the floor for 2 minutes with our phone in another room, letting the back feel fully supported, letting the exhale be slightly longer than the inhale, a tiny physical way of saying, I am not in court right now. We can place one hand on the chest, one on the belly, and whisper out loud, what you feel is real enough to listen to. This is not magic. It will not cancel the confusion overnight. But every time we respond to tension with kindness instead of more self-doubt, we weaken the gaslighter's biggest ally, our own inner critic. Second, we can start associating certain physical signals with red flags. If our jaw locks every time a particular person calls, that is data. If we leave conversations with them and our shoulders feel like stone, that is data. Instead of pushing through and calling it normal, we can treat our body like an early warning system. Something about this dynamic is costing me too much. When we honor those signals, even in small ways, taking a break, leaving the room, delaying a reply, we teach the nervous system that it has allies on our side, putting it all together, how to fight without becoming a mirror. Many people judge themselves harshly for not being able to just leave a gaslighter, or for leaving and then going back. They call themselves weak, foolish, addicted. From the inside, what looks like weakness is often neurochemical withdrawal. When reality and affection are delivered in unpredictable bursts, one day we are the only one who gets them, the next day we are crazy. The brain wires itself like an addict. Each tiny moment of validation, each rare day without criticism, becomes a hit of relief after long deprivation. When we finally step away or go low contact, our system screams. We miss them, yes, but we also miss the pattern, the high of being temporarily seen, the drama of being needed, the familiar fight that at least made us feel alive. Silence feels unbearable. We reread old chats, check their social media, have imaginary conversations where they suddenly admit everything. In that state, it is easy to turn the whole labyrinth back on ourselves. If I was stronger, smarter, more healed, I wouldn't be here. But remember, gaslighting is designed to make us doubt our perception. That doubt does not vanish the moment we walk out the door. It lingers like smoke in the walls. Nietzsche once warned that if we stare too long into the abyss starts staring back. Living for years in someone else's distorted reality can twist our own reflection. We start preemptively downplaying our feelings, even with safe people. We catch ourselves gaslighting others in tiny ways. It wasn't that bad, don't be so dramatic, because that language has become the wallpaper of our mind. The way out is not to become morally perfect or spiritually enlightened. It is to look with ruthless honesty at where the hooks landed in us. Maybe they hooked into our fear of being ordinary, so we tolerated almost anything from impressive, charismatic people. Maybe into our fear of conflict, so we accepted endless micro-attacks just to avoid one big fight. Maybe into a childhood where being disbelieved was normal, so this felt like home. Once we see the hook, the gaslighter loses their mythical power. They become what they always were, a frightened person using control to avoid their own shame. Still dangerous, but no longer magical. Practically breaking gaslighting patterns means 3 ongoing commitments. First, reality anchors. That can look like journaling specific events with dates and concrete details, talking to one grounded friend after confusing interactions, or even writing short letters to our future self. Today they said X, I felt Y. Here is what actually happened. Not to obsess, but to give our brain a stable record to return to when doubt starts whispering. Second, no more reality debates. We can decide that we do not argue about our perception with someone who has shown us they will always win by making us lose. We can share how we feel once clearly, and if the response is more gaslighting, we step back instead of trying to finally explain it right. Our job is to live in honesty, not to convince a person committed to distortion. Third, building a life where their version of us is no longer the main mirror. That means placing our attention, slowly, imperfectly, into people and projects that reflect back something different. Competence, creativity, kindness, ordinary humanity. In a world that rewards manipulation and polished performance, this is almost a rebellious act. But it is the only long-term antidote. Narcissists and gaslighters thrive around people starving for mirrors. The less we rely on any one person to tell us who we are, the harder it is for them to feed. If you are listening to this and feeling that the labyrinth is deeper than you realize, that is not a sign you are lost. It is a sign you are finally seeing the walls. You do not have to knock them all down today. Choose one move that felt the sharpest, the blame shift, the "you're too," the tribal gaslight, the body on red alert, and work with that for a while. Maybe it means one boundary, one honest sentence, one decision not to explain yourself for the 10th time. Each of those is a stone removed from the old structure. One day, the rooms where gaslighters once rearranged your thoughts will simply feel different, quieter, clearer, almost boring in the best possible way. Their tricks will still exist in the world, but instead of swallowing you whole, they will land on a mind that has anchors and on a body that knows how safety feels. When the next person tries to tell you that what you saw you didn't see, that what you felt you didn't feel, you will notice your jaw tighten, your chest respond, and instead of doubting yourself, you will treat those signals as a red light. You may still feel the pull to explain, to prove, to negotiate your reality, but you will recognize that the urge as part of the old training, not a command you have to obey. And in that moment, not dramatic, not cinematic, just steady, you will do the most radical thing a gaslit mind can do. You will believe yourself first, and then calmly walk toward the people and places where that self is no longer up for debate.